something has shifted around California's governor, and it isn't coming from a single vote, ruling, or headline. The scrutiny surrounding Gavin Newsom is deeper now, more sustained, and harder to dismiss. It reflects a quiet change in how leadership is being evaluated not by intent, but by outcomes, limits, and institutional strain. What makes this moment unusual is that the pressure isn't driven by scandal, it's driven by convergence. Budget realities, housing shortfalls, court interventions, and local resistance are aligning at the same time. When multiple systems begin pressing inward simultaneously, scrutiny becomes structural rather than political. Within the first year of this shift, a national question has emerged. If California, with its scale, revenue base, and influence, struggles to execute its ambition smoothly, what does that say about the limits of modern governance? This isn't about one governor's popularity, it's about system credibility. Housing has become one of the clearest pressure points. Despite aggressive legislative action and public commitments, construction and affordability metrics have lagged behind stated goals, according to widely reported data. That gap between aspiration and delivery has become harder to explain away, especially as timelines extend. Budget dynamics add another layer. After years shaped by surplus-driven expansion, fiscal projections have tightened. Programs launched during stronger cycles face sustainability questions. This doesn't imply collapse, but it does narrow options. And narrower options invite closer examination. Courts have also entered the picture more visibly. Judicial review of regulatory scope, enforcement authority, and implementation timelines has slowed or reshaped certain initiatives. That process is routine in governance, but its accumulation contributes to the sense that execution is being stress-tested. Local governments are part of this story too. City leaders have increasingly raised concerns about funding, compliance capacity, and timelines. These aren't acts of defiance, but signals of friction. When alignment weakens between state vision and local delivery, scrutiny naturally intensifies. Here's what often goes unspoken. Scrutiny grows fastest when momentum slows. As long as outcomes track promises, leadership narratives remain intact. When progress becomes uneven, attention shifts from vision to mechanics. That transition is subtle, but politically consequential. National media interest has followed this shift, not because California is failing, but because it matters. California is often treated as a preview of policy direction elsewhere. Execution challenges here influence how similar ideas are evaluated across the country. At this stage, the scrutiny isn't personal. It's procedural. How quickly can systems adapt? How much flexibility exists when budgets tighten and courts intervene? These questions are less dramatic and campaign rhetoric, but far more durable. There's also a timing factor that can't be ignored. California is moving closer to another election cycle, while national political conversations remain volatile. Every policy outcome now carries symbolic weight, even when it emerges from technical constraints rather than political choice. Midway through this story, it's worth noting something about who tends to notice these moments first. Serious political observers, people who follow institutions rather than personalities, tend to sense pressure before it becomes obvious. That's why many who watch closely tend to stay engaged here. So where do you think this scrutiny is actually coming from? The answer depends on perspective. Supporters often frame this period as long-term adjustment. Critics emphasize short-term strain. Both interpretations coexist, but neither fully explains why attention has intensified now instead of earlier. One reason is accumulation. Housing, budgets, courts, and local coordination are rarely judged in isolation. When they converge, they create a narrative environment where leadership decisions are interpreted through a wider lens, even when individual actions are defensible. Another reason is expectation management. California's political identity is built on ambition. Ambition raises standards. When delivery lags, even modestly, the contrast becomes sharper. Scrutiny grows not because expectations were unreasonable, but because they were set high. This moment also highlights an uncomfortable reality of governance. Success creates future pressure. Expansive programs require ongoing funding, coordination, and enforcement. Over time, complexity compounds. Managing that complexity becomes the true test of leadership. Public trust plays a quiet role here. trust isn't lost through a single failure. It shifts when systems appear less predictable. Delays, revisions, and legal challenges can create that perception even when policy goals remain intact. What's striking is how little of this hinges on rhetoric. Speeches still sound confident, messaging remains consistent. The scrutiny is emerging beneath that layer, in spreadsheets, court dockets, housing permits, and budget revisions. For national audiences, this matters because it reframes how policy success is judged. Not by passage, but by persistence, not by announcements, but by durability. California's experience is becoming a reference point for that recalibration. As this period continues, the most revealing signals won't come from polls or press conferences. They'll come from adjustments, quiet recalibrations, revised timelines, negotiated compromises. These are signs of pressure being managed rather than denied. The question now isn't whether scrutiny will continue, but how it will shape future decisions. Will policy ambition narrow? Will implementation strategies change? Or will systems absorb the strain and adapt without visible retreat? Ultimately, what's at stake isn't a single political career. It's confidence in large-scale governance at a moment when public expectations remain high and institutional tolerance for inefficiency is low. That's why the scrutiny feels different this time. It isn't loud, but it's persistent. And once scrutiny shifts from moments to systems, it rarely fades quickly. The real story going forward won't be found in one outcome, but in patterns: how often adjustments are needed, how coordination improves, and how trust responds. And as those patterns emerge, they may answer a larger question that extends well beyond California, one that's only beginning to come into focus.